Hey y'all, I'm Hope here at Crafty Hope and welcome! Today I am working on Index Card a Day cards 34, 35, and 36. This is known as ICAD, and that is a challenge. It's a daily challenge that ran all of June and July and has for the past several years. It comes from Tammy Garcia. You can find her on Instagram as Gypsy999 or on her website, Daisy Yellow Art. I'll have her links below. The idea of ICAD is to just take an index card and create some art every day, but Tammy provides daily prompts and weekly themes to kind of incentivize you, to inspire you, to help you on that journey. They are not required. So on this day, Tammy's prompt is pen. Friend Nina Fickett has a set of prompts that are called Mixed Media ICAD prompts, and her prompt is visual texture. Now, I could not figure out how to work out the panorama prompt from Tammy, but I did decide that visual texture would be fairly easy to do. So that's what I'm going for. On this day, I'm going to go ahead and let you know it is the 4th of July or Independence Day here in the United States. And I kind of had that in my brain somehow. So this card is definitely going to veer in that direction. As you saw, I started by collaging on top of my card using some fluid matte medium and just scraps from my stash. Once I got them down and dry, I did trim them and then scribbled around on the card with a blue Stabilo all pencil. Now, the Stabilo all pencils are water reactive, as you can see, because I then took a wet paintbrush and activated all of the lines that I scribbled on there just to get that beautiful blue color on there. And I will dry it also once it's activated. And you can see I'm only pulling that color to one side of the line just to kind of move it around. So, in addition to the collage and the scribbles, to me, those are visual texture. I decided at this point to add some masking tape because I figured I would add some kind of wet media on there at some point that would pick up all of the torn edges of the masking tape. It's a technique I really like. So I am going with that. So I'm just putting down layers and layers of visual texture here. And you can see I'm making sure I tear down my masking tape, fairly small, not super small, but enough that I get torn edges on here. So when I add the wet media in a moment, it'll accentuate all of those torn edges. So I'm going to put that away. Before I come in with the wet media, I decided to add some visual texture with some texture stamps. This is a Bow Bunny stamp I have, and I'm using Stays On ink because it is permanent ink and it will not move when I add that wet media. So I'm just going to bring in a little more texture in black on top of the masking tape and the other bits of the card. This card does not end up as textured, I think, as I wanted it to feel, but I tried. It was definitely a prompt and inspiration to go somewhere with it, to make sure I tried. Now I want to push this back just a tiny bit, so I'm using a touch of white gesso and a brayer to kind of put that gesso down in kind of a splotchy pattern, nothing very consistent. While that gesso is still slightly wet, you see I haven't dried it, I'm going to add, this is, I think it's, I can't think of the color, primary magenta maybe? I don't know. I will have it below. It's from Amsterdam. It's an acrylic ink, and you saw, put a couple drops down and then spritzing around. Now, while I think this is called magenta, you can see how bright red it actually is. And that, to me, I was going with the red, white, and blue that suited the day of the 4th of July here in the States. So I did I did wet the red ink, moved it around a little bit, and then blotted it up, and then I added a couple more concentrated drops, a little more water, gonna move it around a bit more. Like I said, I'm trying to pick up the edges of that masking tape. So there's a lot of wet media here. It took me forever to dry this. So I'm picking it up a little bit more because I didn't want that red to be so much in your face. I want blue to show through as well. I did dry that, and it took forever because water had gotten up underneath the masking tape, and I had to keep pushing it out and drying, pushing it out and drying. I did futz around with some fabric scraps and some other things off camera, and then it hit me that I had one of these Tim Holtz paper dolls with a little girl who is holding the American flag. So, kind of just going with that motif of 4th of July. I inked the edges of the paper doll with some walnut stained distress ink just to age her up a bit, and then pulled out a set of cling letter stamps and some foil stars. Now these are in several colors, but I am just using the silver ones to stick down on my card, to kind of get that I don't know, still kind of carry through that idea of America and the flag and all of that. So I'm sticking those down. Y'all, I have to admit, on 4th of July, my husband and I always have a big party at our house. So I was totally rushing with this card because I knew I had a lot to get done. I was as prepared as I could be, but I didn't spend as much time fretting over this card as I might have. And in the end, it's a fine card. It's probably not my favorite thing I've ever made, but for a patriotic-ish card, it's not too bad. So once I got all my stars down there and trimmed off any that went off the edges, I did make sure some of them went off the edge so that I don't know, felt a little more organic. It wasn't like centered all in the middle. I decided I needed a touch of black in the background, so I'm using a black Stabilo awl that I dipped in my water, and I'm using a paintbrush just to kind of pull that color off and splatter it on the card. And of course I dried it. Now I'm going to use those cling stamps to spell out the word United. And so since this is going to be reversed, of course, I'm starting at the right side and spelling it toward the left. I kind of wish I had done each letter individually because this is awful spaced out. And I don't know, if I had thought about it, I would have done the letters individually so I could have spaced them myself. So this set of set of stamps does have a question mark on it. Yeah, and you see I'm pointing at it because I felt like I almost wanted to add a question mark at the end of the word United, because the United States lately has been in a bit of turmoil, just politically divided with the election coming up and everything. So but I didn't. I wanted to kind of stay true to being patriotic, and I left it off. I am stamping this with more of that jet black stays on, and then I know from there I want to add my girl. So I'm going to mess with her a little bit, and I'm keeping in, wanted to edit this down just a little bit, but I'm going to keep it in. Oh, it's not this part. It'll be here in a second. The stars weren't popping enough to me, I felt like, so I am using an R2 pen. It's a roller ball pen from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going around just like the right side and under of the stars. What I love about this cheap pen from Dollar Tree is that if you, while the ink is still wet, hit it with some water, it will get kind of bleedy and blendy. And so that's what I did. I let it kind of bleed and blend off of those stars to give them a little bit of shadow and definition. Yeah. Once I get them all done, I'm going to look at my girl again for a minute, and then ink up the edges with more of that walnut stained distress ink just of the card to frame it up and also bring that color onto the card since it's already on my girl. Now I need to attach her, and I started to grab some Nouveau Deluxe adhesive to put her down, But then you'll see here in a second, I'm going to cover the back of her. And I like this because it's got this like really fine tip. And since that with the flag and her legs and all being such tiny things, I thought that would be really good. But then as I go to put her down, I was like, no, I really want her to have more of a 3D element. So I go and grab a bit of foam tape, double-sided foam tape. And when I put it into the adhesive, it gets super slippery around. And I was afraid that it wasn't going to stick to that paper doll very well. So I ended up pulling it up and then wiping all that adhesive off of her. Look, I'm thinking about it. Yep, I'm just gonna pull it up, use my little towel to wipe that off, and then I think I got another piece of the foam tape. That's what I did because I was like, yeah, this is no good. And then I'm gonna stick her down. I've really been using a lot of more elevated elements on these cards. And once I get that done, I think I'm going to do something else. I'm not sure. Let's find out together. I'm going to give her a little bit of something to stand on using that Stabilo All pencil just so that she's not floating there on the card. And once I get done with that, this card will be done. I'm going to give you a quick look at it, and then we will get to card number 35. Card 35 had the prompts of splash and stencil. And y'all, as soon as I saw those prompts, I had a specific stencil in mind. And it was only later that I realized the actual name of that. It was today while I'm recording this video that I realized that that's the name of the Tim Holtz stencil I'm going to use is splash. So I find it funny because I saw the word splash and I thought, oh, that weird stencil I have with the teardrops coming around. You'll see it in a bit. Made me think of splash. So it was aptly named, I suppose. Anyway, I started this just like I did the last one, and as I do most of my cards, which is to put some papers down on my index card. In this, again, it's scraps, and I'm using my fluid matte medium. And that bit of scrapbook paper that's there along the bottom is going to really inspire like the coloring and the feel of this card a whole lot. I'm not even sure where I got that scrapbook paper. It was probably gifted to me because I don't remember buying it. But it is, I don't know, it's kind of I don't want to say Victorian. I'm really bad at knowing ages. But it's got like handwritten letters and like some people and roses and just kind of vintagey old world feeling. So, and lots of pastels and off-whites and that kind of thing. So, but you can see I also added like part of a handwritten letter and some dictionary paper. Here's a bit of it's paper from Your Creative Studio. I unboxed that, a while back. I'll put a link to that though. But it's a little booklet of papers that have like stamps and things on it. So I'm just trying to get a little bit more texture there in the background. Break up those papers a little bit more so you're not seeing the straight lines of them near as much. So once that is, I thought that was going to be it. No, I've got a little piece there that I'm going to put over. And that is part of it's some kind of like tracing paper that came with a bunch of like architectural drawings I got. So, all right. So I'm gonna, last thing. Yes, this makes a huge statement. And I don't know if it's a Tim Holtz thing or if I got it in some other kind of ephemera haul. But y'all, it's a bit of, and it says insecticides on it or something. So I've been hesitant to use it. Because I don't know, I just don't like the idea of something insecticide being on my art. So I'm doing my best to cover it up. So here's that stencil. This one is a like tag sized one that I thought I would Yeah, I think it came with 2 or 3 other stamps in a set. So, but it's what I thought of as soon as I saw the words splash and stencil, and I guess that's exactly what it is. So I pulled out this, I think it's a Deco Arts paint. I think it's cotton candy. And y'all, I don't think I'm going to use it. So I pulled it out, started to use it, and was like, it's so pink. I don't really want pink. I want more of a corally peach. So I've pulled out this one. I think that's an Anita's, and I'll have to put what the color is down below. Maybe something like flesh or peach, or I don't know. I am using a cosmetic wedge. Oh, I do. And those 2 colors. So I did use that cotton candy. And I am stenciling it on there. Like I said, this peachy pink color was totally inspired. You can see over on that bottom left side is a bit of some kind of flower from that scrapbook paper. And that's what had me going for this color. Not pinks are definitely not my usual jam. So when this card is done, it feels awfully sweet to me. I am going to dry this and then pull out some Lucas titanium white acrylic paint to add a little bit of brightness to this card, but I'm going to keep going with that same stencil. So, and I think I'm going to use actually one other color even after this to just keep adding that stencil on there. So splash and stencil, and it works. It's such a neat, I don't know, it's almost floral feeling, even though it's supposed to be splash somehow. Yeah. So there's that white going down, and then I ended up pulling out this bit of green. I don't know what the shade of green is, but that part with the rose on it, of course, had some botanical leafiness in it, and so there's green, and I thought, okay, well, we'll put green on the card just as well. So I'm not gonna go crazy. Well, maybe I am. I was trying not to go crazy with it, but I wanted to feel balanced too. And that's about it for using that stencil. So from there, I'm going, y'all, look at me fooling myself. Yeah, I guess I did go a little crazy with it. I wanted to make sure, and I still hadn't completely covered up that insecticide ephemera piece. So this was feeling super sweet and not near grungy enough. So you can see I've pulled out my little yogurt container with dried up instant coffee. I added some water to reconstitute it, and now I'm really just gonna put a little bit. I mean, I could have gone crazy with this, but I tried to keep it simple, just enough to darken it up a little so it didn't feel so fresh. And you see I painted a little bit on there and then splattered a little bit more, and then I will dry it again. That's the key for me, and with a lot of these layers, is to dry between them so you can add more things. Now, I will admit I sorted through some containers of scraps and some containers of fabrics and all kinds of stuff, and ended up pulling out this bit of lace. So this was a bit more futzy than you're getting to see, but just know that I didn't automatically go to that bit of lace. I played with some other things first. And then I had this piece of, it's a pale orangey peach bit of embroidery floss that was already in my pin cushion. Who knows why? I mean, we'd have to go back probably some other ICADs to find it. But I tied a knot in the end of it real quick. I don't think that knot's going to stay for some reason. And then pulled out these photo strips, thinking I would add one. I found this girl at the bottom that was super cute. Spoiler, I will not be using her in this card, but I'm keeping it here because I will be using her in the next card. So I wanted to go ahead and show you how I altered her. So you saw I trimmed off the frame that was around her and started inking the edges and roughing her up and bending that photo booth. I think I'm gonna grab scissors and distress her edges a little bit. And I like these. There's something about the photo booths. They're so perfectly pristine that I almost always have to rough them up a little to make myself feel a bit more like they are vintage. I did add walnut stained distress ink around the edges of it, and I'm gonna again futz. I did keep this in here, like I said, because I ended up using this image on the next card. So I'm just trying, I think, there to cover up part of that insecticide thing, and then I don't know, and all of this futzing, and she looks fine on there, right there, but I don't know, it just wasn't what I wanted. So you saw, tossed her aside, grabbed some Fabri-Tac while I was waiting for it to go to the head of the bottle. I went and grabbed some buttons, and now I'm going to put the Fabri-Tac down and just stick the lace on it. The buttons I've pulled out there are some like coral colored. It's a whole set I got from I think it's called Dress It Up Beads, which is a sister company of Jesse James Beads. So I had all these coral colored beads, and I pulled out, well, I started with 3, and I was like, no, 3's too many. That's too much pink. I need something else. I was like, how about some brown that kind of matches the brown of the coffee that I put down and helps it still feel a little bit grungy. So that's what I've picked out, are these 2 coral ones that kind of match that same coral color that's in the background. And now I'm going to stitch these buttons on. So I pre-punched the hole, and there, that knot was not, it was not big enough. Partly because the needle that I'm using is really big. So when that needle went through, it made a hole that was larger than the knot that I tied. So I just made a bigger knot. And then I'm going to attach these 3 buttons, kind of just a little cluster. I'm going to speed this up a little bit because, y'all, it's just sewing buttons on. I'm trying to think. I think this one has the 4 holes in it, so I'm going to give it an X shape. But the first one I put on just had 2 holes, so it got 2 stitches going through it, and that's my typical jam. If it's got 4 holes, it gets an X, which is 2 stitches, and if it's just 2 holes, it gets a single. It gets 2 stitches. So I am taping up the back a little bit to firm it up, since I did pull that hole through there, and I'm looking at it, and you can see I did not tie off or cut off that thread because I was thinking about what else this card needed. And first I'm going to go ahead and do what I know I'm going to do to everything, that is ink the edges of it. Then I went and grabbed my small talk stickers and found the words, do what you love what you do. And I quickly just lightly ink the edges of this. It doesn't really show up much on the card. And I will use my Oohoo glue stick to put some additional adhesive on the back of that sentiment before I stick it down. And I still felt like this card needed something. So what I'm going to do is add a smattering of French knots with that needle that's still attached. And y'all, I'm going to go and tell you that thread really, I really like that I added the French knots on here, but they don't add much to this card because that thread is so light. It doesn't really make any kind of statement. So if I had to go back, maybe just a plain white like that lace would have been nice, or like the green that's on there, something that would have popped just a little bit more while still going with the card, I think would have been a little bit more my jam. So there are regrets, but I mean, it's a fine card. But I'm just saying that if I was going to redo these French knots, that's how I would redo it. So French knots, I've explained in several of my other videos, and it's you come up through the back of the card or your fabric or whatever, wrap your thread around the needle a couple times, and then go back in your card in a slightly offset spot, and that's it. So I'm sure you can find a better tutorial than that somewhere, but that's just the quick and dirty of it, I guess. So I'm going to tie this off and tape it up, and then this card will be done. Again, I'm going to give you a quick look at it, but don't fret, I do have detail pictures of all 3 of these cards at the end of this video. So stay tuned. We are going to get to the last card in this in just a second. Card 36 had the prompts of balance and watercolor paper, and I didn't use either one of those, y'all. And I'm going to admit that this is probably my favorite of these three cards. I do like the previous one because it has the buttons on it, but as far as like the coloring and all of that, I really like this one a lot. So I started this one simply enough. Instead of collaging little bits of things, I used my Uhu glue stick, covered my index card with the glue, and then put down, this is some kind of blueprint plat or something that I received from my friend Nina Fickett, who of course does the mixed media ICAD prompts. And yeah, so I stuck that down just to get something down super quick and then move on. I know in looking at my Instagram post about ICAD while it was going on that I was super stressed for time on these 2 days, the 5th and 6th, and just was trying to get them done. I can't tell you now what it was I was doing, but I did get these done on those days. I just had a lot going on apparently. So I've got this turquoise Liquitex acrylic paint that I put down. That may not be the exact right color name, but it's something like light turquoise or something like that I used to put some finger dots down. And then I grabbed my brown Stabilo all pencil and circled those finger dots. This is something I do all the time with other paints and Stabilos, and it's just something I like. And again, because the Stabilo is water reactive, I've got that little paintbrush and I am activating it. It's not my favorite thing and I'm going to end up, you're never going to really even see these when this card is done. This was definitely getting my hands busy going in on this card, and just kind of, I was struggling. I was trying to find something. So I grabbed my watercolors there, and I'm going to paint on some more tealy blue-green paint on here, and I'm not loving it. No, I'm getting it on there. It's definitely got more green to it. And I'm going to dry it, since I'm going to think about it for a minute, actually, y'all. You're going to see me. I'm trying to get some of the excess paint off my finger dots before I try to dry it, because then I know. Oh, and I tried to draw into some of those that had too much paint in them to see if anything came of that. Yeah, I was real struggling with this card. And it's funny because, like I said, in the end, this of these three cards, this one is my favorite. So I did blot it off on my desk just super quick before I tried it. And then I'm coming back in with a bit of some texture paste. This is the Ranger Distress texture paste. And y'all, it is usually creamier than this. I don't know. I think I bought it on clearance and then didn't use it, and it has dried up on me. So I am doing what I can to get it out and just using my finger to get it down on my card, because I think if I had tried to use a palette knife or something, it would have just bent my palette knife. I am a bad user of craft supplies. I tend to just forget that I have them rather than use them, or I make them too precious, like my Not Precious project, and then never use them because I think they're too precious to actually use. Anyway, so I got that down on there, kind of went around my finger dots and let it dry, and then I've come back with a bit of, I believe that's Mermaid Lagoon Distress Oxide spray, and you saw sprayed it on there, and then I'm adding a bunch of water and letting it kind of move around on my card. Yeah, and it's really neat the way this, I think I'm going to blot it in a couple spots, but the way this worked with some of that texture paste is interesting. The way the texture paste in a little bit act like a bit of a resist. So it's kind of neat. And I'm going to play with that just a little bit here in a little while. So I did dry that, and I'm going over that texture paste with a graphite stick just rubbing over it and then activating. That graphite stick is water reactive, so I'm activating it to try to pick up that texture and get some of that distress oxide off of there. And still, I know I'm struggling with this card. I can tell by watching this. It's been a month or two. What month am I in now? It's been about a month or over a month since I did this card, but I can tell just by watching that I struggled. Now, one of my favorite things to do with that graphite stick is to dip it in water and then kind of sling it at my surface to get some nice splatter on there. And that is, in the detail shots, is probably one of my favorite things. And then I'm using coffee once again to try to pick up more of that texture paste that I put down. But y'all saw what I did, that texture paste. I rubbed it in there real hard. I smoothed it out with a scraping tool. I didn't leave myself much texture on there. So yeah, it did what it did. So that was the coffee I painted on, and I think it even splatters a little. So here I'm trying to figure out what my focal is going to be, and I've pulled out my snippet roll, which I did do during my Not Precious project. And I thought, okay, well, this might be a nice way to, it's got a completely different colorway, so it pops a bit on here, and I thought that would be a great way to put it on there. I've pulled that girl from yesterday or the day before, and thinking, okay, well, these two things could work. I need a little bit more texture in the background because apparently I didn't have enough. I don't know. Also, I wanted some more like black on there, so I am using black soot distress oxide and one of my hand carved stamps and putting it in the background. And y'all see how I kind of avoided the middle of the card? I think I mentioned that in my last ICAD video, that I often neglect the very middle of the card and work around the edges, and I don't know why I do that. I was consciously like, no, put something in the middle. And so I've got that one stamp that's like right there in the middle, and I'm going to tell you now that looking at this card, it doesn't matter. That one stamp. So I'm futzing with that bit of my snippet roll, turning it and twisting it, tearing the edges, trying to decide how it would best look on this card. I think the arrow at the top of it was bothering me, like the arrow needed to point to something, and you can see, so much futzing. So I'm tearing it down because it has a straight cut edge, and of course I can't have that. And that looks pretty neat. I think my problem was that this snippet roll is almost as tall as my cards are. So it takes up so much of it. And it felt like all the work I had done in the background, if I put this little bit of snippet roll there, it was all for naught. So I will not be using the snippet roll. Instead, I go grabbing for my favorite, what is it called? It's Sea Glass Americana paint, which is a pale blue-green paint. I am trying to pick up some of that texture from the texture paste that I put down using this paint. And so you can see that's kind of where I'm rubbing with my finger, using, it's kind of a dry brush technique where I have just a little bit of that paint on my finger. But I'm going to end up using just a little bit more in a couple spots, and that really does add some super interest. I don't know why this color goes with everything. To me, it almost feels like a neutral, and I love this. I love this color. So there I put a little too much, and you can see I'm trying to like brush it out, and I think that's where it starts to bother me. So I'm going to end up grabbing a paintbrush here in just a second to do some additional mark making in the background. Yep, there we go. Picking up some of that paint and just making some little marks so that, yeah, it's going to kind of soak into the background. Pretty much, and part of that's probably the Mermaid Lagoon and the coffee are both water reactive, along with that black soot distress ink. So this sea glass paint just kind of, I don't know, just seeps in and becomes like inconsequential, but still very much adding to the whole tone of it. I pulled out a bit of a fabric scrap, and y'all, I don't know what this is. I know it's dyed with something, but it could be coffee, could be a rust. I have no idea. Scrap fabric. I don't know. I'm going to cut it slightly larger than the card, just so that it's going to hang off either edge just a little bit. And then of course grab the fabric tack to stick it down. So I am, futzing with things, putting the fabric tack in that while I futz. So, oh no, I tacked it down with my Oohoo, but I am going to use the fabric tack on my photo, because those photo booth photos tend to be kind of heavy and they need some kind of additional glue. The Oohoo wouldn't have cut it unless I peeled the back off a little bit. So I am using the fabric tack to stick that photo down. And then I took a scrap of paper and went to my typewriter and typed up, and you can see, y'all, that's just the margin of some other paper that I had. And it says, "When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you," which is a song lyric. So I typed that up because I really liked that girl's smile and she just seemed so sweet. So I inked up the edges of that typewritten bit, and this, I don't know, I made sure all the edges were tore so that all took that distress ink really well. And I'm going to futz for a minute trying to figure out exactly where that needs to go. I didn't want to cover up all my fabric because I knew I wanted to do some stitching on it, but I ended up, it just felt the best there. So I'm going to pull out a little bit of black. Oh, no, first I'm going to ink my edges. More of the walnut stain distress ink. Somehow I don't think I went across the bottom with that, did I? Why do I always miss edges, y'all? And I don't notice it till I'm doing these voiceovers. I'm a mess. I am a mess. So I think now I'm pulling out some black thread that I'm going to put on a needle. And I'm really just going to do a couple of stitches at either end of this fabric. And that helps a little bit because, as you saw, I only used the Oohoo on the fabric. I didn't use any kind of a stronger glue, so this helps make sure that that fabric's gonna stick down. So I'm going to do 2 stitches on this edge and then 3 at the other. And that, I don't know, I can't believe that's the only stitches I did, but it's just what felt right. I mean, this was a really busy card. And sometimes the cards that come together quick and easy without much are often my favorite, but this one, I don't know. I think it's got to be the blue with the browns. I'm a sucker for the blues with the browns. So I do tie this off, and I'm going to look at the card for a minute and decide that I need a little bit of something like framing her up. Like, it just doesn't feel right. So I will grab that rollerball pen, again, that Dollar Tree rollerball pen, and make a couple scallops on 2 sides of her and pull out that ink, from the scallops, not in, but out. And then I think once that is done, I may be finished with this. Oh, wait, no, I'm not going to be finished. I decided I needed one more thing, and that's going to be some gold splatter that I'm going to get using my Liquitex Bright Gold acrylic ink and just a wet paintbrush. And and once that dries, it will be beautiful. I do cover up, as you can see, my focal and my sentiment so that they don't get splatter all over them. And that will be it for cards 34, 35, and 36 of Index Card a Day for 2024. I hope you have enjoyed this. Let me know which of these 3 is your favorite, or if you have any questions or comments or anything else, I would love to hear from you. Thanks so much for spending this time with me. I appreciate it more than you know. Thanks for watching, y'all. Bye.